Hi, great to see so many people here now. I'm Adi. I was in Gaza for 2 years, including during the attacks in Gaza in 2012, so I've seen up close the horrific damage these bombs can do, having stayed a lot of that time in Gaza hospitals. There's a letter here that's just been released from Gaza from a large amount of different groups, and it's calling on people like yourselves, people of conscience, and people beyond yourselves, people outside of this demo, to get hold of them, to get them to act in many different ways. Dr. Mona Al-Farah is a dermatologist. She's actually got her children here in Manchester, but she's in Gaza right now. She's doing a lot of reporting out of Gaza. Something she always tells me is to remind me that it's not just about charity, it's about solidarity. And this is really important because a lot of aid organisations are doing very good work, but remember that this is a political problem. This is not an environmental disaster. This needs political action. One of the things in Gaza that they're calling for is the boycotts, divestments and sanctions of Israel. That doesn't just mean governments sanctioning Israel, which we hope they will one day. That also means people here. That means people here going into supermarkets and making sure that they are no longer stocking Israeli goods because it's complicit in these Israeli crimes. That means people here contacting any artist or performer that aims to perform in Israel and saying, no, you're normalizing relations with a criminal state. Do not entertain apartheid Israel. This is another action we can all take. There are many different boycott actions that we can do individually and as small groups, and they are having an impact. There are many musicians, many artists, famous ones, who are no longer performing there. Many companies are having to pull out. Even European governments are saying we can no longer, it's a risk to do any kind of dealing with Israeli companies or any companies dealing with the illegal settlements of Palestinian land. I'm going to read now the call from Gaza that has just been issued. And it is quite sad, but it's also quite empowering, and we should realise that they have no choice but to resist. They are beneath some of the most horrific bombardments you can possibly imagine. But we have time and space and resources, and it's our duty to make use of that privilege, to not turn our back on those people out there in Gaza, and to act and to continue to act beyond this demonstration, beyond this very important demonstration at the BBC. It's important that we go off, work in our groups and continue to demand action on Palestine, because it's only by lots of people doing small actions that change has ever happened in the past, and we should always remember that. And the more we sustain it, the quicker we can relieve the Palestinians of further massacres and occupation like we've seen. Urgent call from Gaza civil society, act now. We Palestinians trapped inside the bloodied and besieged Gaza Strip call on conscientious people all over the world to act, to protest and intensify the boycotts, divestment and sanctions against Israel until it ends this murderous attack on our people and is held to account. With the world turning their backs on us once again, for the last 4 days we have in Gaza been left to face massacre after massacre. As you read these words, over 120 Palestinians are dead now, including 25 children. Over 1,000 have been injured, including countless horrifying injuries that will limit lives forever. More than 2/3 of the injured are women and children. We know for a fact that many more will not make it through the next day. Which of us will be next as we lie awake from the sound of the carnage in our beds tonight? Will we be the next photo left in an unrecognisable state from Israel's state-of-the-art, flesh-tearing, limb-stripping machinery of destruction? We call for a final end to the crimes and oppression against us. We call for arms embargoes on Israel, sanctions that would cut off the supply of weapons and military aid from Europe and the United States on which Israel depends to commit such war crimes. Suspension of all free trade and bilateral agreements with Israel, such as the EU-Israel Association Agreement. Boycott, divestment and sanctions as called for by the overwhelming majority of Palestinian civil society in 2005. Without pressure and isolation, the Israeli regime has proven time and time again that it will continue such massacres as we see around us now. and continue the decades of systematic ethnic cleansing, military occupation and apartheid policies. We are writing this on Saturday, again paralysed in our homes as the bombs fall on us in Gaza right now. Who knows when the current attacks will end? For anyone over 7 years old, permanently etched on our minds are the rivers of blood that ran through the Gaza streets when for over 3 weeks in 2009, over 1,400 Palestinians were killed, including over 330 children. White phosphorus and other chemical weapons were used in civilian areas and contaminating our land with a rise in cancers as a result. More recently, 180 more were killed in the week-long attacks in late November 2012. This time what? 200? 500? 5,000? We ask how many more of our lives are dispensable enough until the world takes action? How much of our blood is sufficient? Before the Israeli bombings, a member of the Israeli Knesset, Ayelet Shaked of the far-right Jewish Home Party, called for genocide of the Palestinian people. They should go, as should the physical homes in which they raised the snakes, she said. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. Right now, nothing is beyond the murderous nature of the Israeli state. For we, a population that is mostly children, are all mere snakes to them. As said Omar Grayeb in Gaza, it was heart-shattering to see the pictures of little boys and girls viciously killed. Also, how an elderly woman was killed while she was having her iftar at Maghreb prayer by bombing her house. She died holding the spoon in her hand, an image that will need a lot of time to leave my head. Entire houses are being targeted and entire families are being murdered. Early Thursday morning, the entire Al-Hajj family was wiped out. The father, Mahmoud, mother, Basma, and 5 children. No warning, a family targeted and removed from life. Thursday night, the same again. No warning. 5 more dead, including 4 from the Hanam family, a woman and a 7-year-old child amongst them. On Tuesday morning, the Kawari family did get a phone call telling them that their 3-story house would be bombed. The family began to leave when a water tank was struck, but then returned with members of the community who all came to the house to stand with them, people from all over the neighbourhood. The Israeli jet bombed the building with a roof full of people, knowing full well it was full of civilians. 7 people died immediately, including 5 children under 13. 25 more were injured. An 8-year-old Siraj Abd al-Al succumbed to his injuries later that evening. Perhaps the family was trying to appeal to the Israeli regime's humanity. Surely they wouldn't bomb the roof full of people. But as we watch families being torn apart around us, it's clear that Israel's action has nothing to do with humanity. Other places hit include a clearly marked media vehicle killing the independent journalist Hamid Shihab, injuring 8 others. A hit on a Red Crescent rescue vehicle, and attacks on hospitals which caused evacuations and more injuries. This latest session of Israeli barbarity is placed firmly in the context of Israel's inhuman 7-year blockade that has cut off the main lifeline of goods and people coming in and out of Gaza, resulting in the severe medical and food shortages being reported by all our hospitals and clinics right now. Cement to rebuild the thousands of homes destroyed by Israeli attacks had been banned, and many injured and ill people are still not being allowed to travel abroad to receive urgent medical treatment, which has caused in the last 7 years the deaths of over 600 sick patients. As more news comes in, as Israeli leaders give promises of moving on to a next stage in brutality, we know there are more horrors yet to come. For this, we call on you to not turn your backs on us. We call on you to stand up for justice and humanity and demonstrate and support the courageous men, women and children rooted in the Gaza Strip, facing the darkest of times ahead. We insist on international action, including severance of diplomatic ties with Israel, trials for war crimes, immediate international protection of civilians of Gaza. We call on you to join the growing international boycott, divestment and sanctions campaign to hold this rogue state to account that is proving once again to be so violent and yet so unchallenged. Join the growing critical mass around the world with a commitment to the day when Palestinians do not have to grow up amidst this relentless murder and destruction by the Israeli regime. When we can move freely, when the siege is lifted, the occupation is over, and the world's Palestinian refugees are finally granted justice. Act now before it's too late. Thank you.